We become what we fight, and also what we flee, freeze, and fawn. Someone said, we become what we fight. At first glance, it sounds poetic. But when you slow it down, it's deeply precise. Because fight is only one trauma response. If it's true for fight, it must also be true for flight, freeze, and fawn. And it is. The core mechanism. We don't become something because it exists out there. We become something because our attention locks onto it. Our nervous system organizes around it. Our identity adapts to survive it. Whatever threatens our emotional safety becomes the central reference point of our inner world. And identity always forms around what the system is trying to avoid or control. That's the paradox. Fight, becoming the thing you oppose. When we fight something, an authority, an abuser, an ideology, a parent, a system, we organize ourselves against it. Over time, our language mirrors it. Our rigidity mirrors it. Our aggression mirrors it. Our need to be right mirrors it. The fighter believes they are the opposite. But internally, they are entangled. The nervous system doesn't register moral intent. It registers threat plus arousal. So the system adapts by becoming compatible with the threat. That's why anti-control people become controlling. Anti-violence movements turn violent. Children of harsh parents become harsh parents in reverse. Not because they want to, but because the body learned that this frequency equals survival. Flight, becoming the thing you run from. Flight looks innocent, even healthy. But here's the catch. When you flee something long enough, your life orientation becomes avoidance. You don't live toward what you love. You live away from what you fear. Over time, decisions are filtered through, will this trigger me? Relationships are chosen based on safety, not truth. Desire shrinks to minimize risk. The person who flees rejection becomes a life structured around not being rejected. Which means, they reject themselves first. They abandon before being abandoned. They never fully show up. They don't escape the threat. They carry it inside, as a navigation system. Freeze, becoming the absence you fear. Freeze is not laziness. It's not passivity. It's overwhelm without perceived exit. The nervous system decides, if I don't move, I won't make it worse. But identity doesn't stay neutral. Over time, the person identifies as stuck. Aliveness feels dangerous. Expression feels unsafe. Desire feels heavy. What they feared, collapse, disappearance, non-existence, becomes their lived identity. They don't disappear because they want to. They disappear because being seen once hurt too much. Fawn, becoming what you try to appease. Fawn is the most deceptive strategy. It looks like love. It feels like kindness. It gets rewarded, at first. But internally, the message is, I must become what you need so I won't be rejected. So identity dissolves into over-attunement, self-sacrifice, hyper-responsibility, emotional invisibility. The fauna becomes the emotional extension of others. Ironically, they become what they fear most, someone without a self. Not because they are weak, but because love once felt conditional. The unifying truth. We don't become what we resist because resistance is bad. We become it because resistance requires constant orientation toward the threat. And the nervous system doesn't differentiate between, I'm focused on this to destroy it. I'm focused on this to avoid it. It only knows, this is what matters for survival. So our strategies harden into identity. Fight becomes I am strong. Flight becomes I am independent. Freeze becomes I am nothing. Fawn becomes I am for others. All of them are adaptive masks, not truth. The way out. The solution is not fighting less, running better, forcing movement, becoming more selfless. The solution is removing the threat from the center of identity. Healing begins when the nervous system experiences safety without performance. The self is allowed to exist without strategy. Identity is no longer built against something. This is why true healing often feels like disorientation, grief, emptiness. Who am I without my patterns? Because the moment you stop fighting, fleeing, freezing, or fawning, the false identity collapses. And what remains is not nothing. What remains is choice. Final truth. We don't become healed by winning the war. We heal by realizing we were never meant to live in war posture. When the nervous system no longer needs to survive against life, identity stops being reactive. And for the first time, we don't become what we resist. We become what we are. Quiet. Whole. Unthreatened. Self. And finally, free to move toward, not away. Can we say that polarization leads to molding around the identity of the other pole we detest so much? Yes. We can say that, and we should say it clearly, because it exposes one of the most misunderstood dynamics in both personal trauma and collective conflict. Yes, polarization molds identity around the pole we detest. Polarization is not just disagreement. It is identity formation through opposition. The moment a system, individual or collective, defines itself primarily as not that, it has already surrendered its center. Because identity needs a reference point. And in polarization, the other pole becomes that reference. How polarization actually works. When two poles are polarized, attention is locked onto the enemy. Meaning is generated through contrast. Emotional arousal stays chronically activated. Identity becomes reactive, not intrinsic. In simple terms, I know who I am because I am not you. But the nervous system doesn't stabilize on negation. It stabilizes on familiar patterns of activation. So what happens? The detested pole becomes the template. Over time, language starts to mirror the opponent. Behavioral rigidity increases. Nuance collapses. Moral superiority replaces self-reflection. Control, coercion, or righteousness creep in. The person or group believes they are resisting the other pole. And this can happen in society, in politics, in events, but also within families and between partners in relationships or parents and their children. But physiologically and psychologically, they are molding themselves around it. Not consciously, not maliciously, but inevitably. The mirror effect of polarization. Polarization is a mirror trap. Each side says, they are blind. They are dangerous. They are the problem. And each side becomes less reflective, more dogmatic, more emotionally reactive, more certain they are right. This is not coincidence. It's mutual nervous system conditioning. Each pole trains the other. Why detestation is so powerful. Detestation feels clarifying. It feels energizing. It gives identity fast. Especially for traumatized systems. Because trauma leaves a vacuum of self. Polarization fills that vacuum with belonging, purpose, moral certainty, a shared enemy. But the cost is steep. You no longer know who you are without the fight. And that is how identity gets hijacked. Collective scale, polarization as identity theft. On a collective level, polarization keeps societies emotionally dysregulated, prevents integration and complexity, makes populations predictable and controllable, ensures that no side ever actually wins. Because if one side truly dissolved the other, its own identity would collapse. So the fight must continue. That's why polarized systems need constant outrage, need escalating narratives, need caricatures instead of humans. Peace would be existentially threatening. The exit point, this is crucial. Healing does not come from choosing the middle or becoming neutral. That's a misunderstanding. The exit comes from withdrawing identity from opposition altogether. When a person or group reclaims an internal reference point, regulates their nervous system, allows complexity and contradiction, stops outsourcing self-definition to an enemy, then something radical happens. The other pole loses its gravitational pull. Not because it disappears, but because it is no longer needed for orientation. The deep truth, no romance. Polarization doesn't happen because people are evil or stupid. It happens because unhealed fear seeks structure. And opposition is the fastest structure there is. But any identity built against something, is not a free identity. It is a reaction in disguise. Freedom begins the moment we stop asking, who am I compared to them? And start asking, who am I when I'm no longer in a fight? That's where sovereignty begins.